At minute 37, she stood up. The compound panel behind me still read species mortality threshold, exceeded ×6. The number had not changed. She had not changed either. No tremor, no color shift, no sign that the institutional certainty piling up on the screen behind me had any weight in the room at all. She collected her meal container, capped the amber bottle, and clipped it back with the worn rubber band, the way someone clips back something that belongs in a kitchen, not something that belongs in a sealed chamber running a post-mortem alert. She walked to the observation glass. My reflection was visible in the darkened panel to my right. I looked like a warning sign. I was aware of this. I was aware of several things simultaneously. "Is there a sink somewhere?" she said. "I want to rinse this before it dries." My voice was level. "The session is not complete." She held up the bottle. "I know, I'm just saying after." A pause. She looked at the amber liquid inside. "I also ran out. I only had about a third left and I thought it would last, but I didn't check before I left and that's on me." She turned it over in her hand like she was calculating whether to ask for another bottle. "The food here is really bland." 3 minutes and 12 seconds remained on the clock. Her respiration was 14 breaths per minute. Her pupils contracted normally under the observation light. The compound panel to my left was documenting a post-mortem. She was asking about deshrincing facilities. I cleared the session at minute 40, 0 seconds. Not early, not late. Then I called the board. What I'm about to tell you is precisely what the instruments showed. It is also a record of their failure. I calibrated Chamber 7 at 6:12 station time. I had done it 312 times before. I will not tell you it felt different. It did not feel different. That is the part I keep returning to. The Velathes Universal Compound Standard had been signed by 40 member species, reviewed by 312 independent biochemists, and had never, in 14 years of operation, encountered a variable it could not name. The doctrine was 14 compounds, meter delivery, approved by the Galactic Biochemical Oversight Directorate. I knew every field on the panel. I had never needed to look at the manual. The doctrine did not require looking at the manual. The doctrine had never been wrong. Quelrathden's arrival itinerary sat in the corner of my console. The auditor docked in 5 hours and 47 minutes. I opened the chemical approval paperwork and ran my eyes across the cocktail. Compound 7, dermal contact agent, the ingestion sensor as a theoretical precaution. In 312 prior sessions, the ingestion sensor had never activated. I noted this the way you note that a door has always opened, not with relief, just with the flat acknowledgement of a thing that has always been true. The queue began at 6:19. The Sklovan cadet entered the chamber, 1.3 meters tall, within normal parameters. The panel read nominal. At 11 minutes 4 seconds, the extraction light went red, and I logged the session complete without ceremony. The system worked. The next cadet entered. The system continued working. Sovathen stood to my left, Vrethkai, one of the 6 technicians on my station. She had been here 6 years. She said, "Does the human cadet need a briefing on the protocol?" I told her the protocol was the same for all species. "I know," Sova said, "I just thought with the food." I told her to note it in the pre-session log. Sen Orath was 4th in the queue, 20 standard years, 51 kilograms, no visible toxin filtration organs. The metabolic scanner had flagged her readout twice as instrument calibration query rerun. I had rerun it. The instrument was not the problem. She was walking from the commissary direction, carrying a meal container and a small amber bottle attached by a worn rubber band. She held it the way someone holds something that belongs in a kitchen, not carefully, just carried, the way you carry something you have never once thought might matter. I opened the prohibited container form. I would address it after the session. We were behind schedule. She sat cross-legged in the center of the chamber floor, 1.4 meters from the primary vent array. She opened her meal container and began eating. The compound panel read nominal. The ingestion sensor activated at minute 1, second 44. In 312 sessions, it had never activated. My skin began its shift. The panel generated its first field, ingestion event, compound 7, subject, cadet ORRATH, dose, 0.74 mg, route, voluntary oral. I read this line 4 times. I logged that I read it 4 times. I did not pull the extraction trigger. Sova Then, to my left, said nothing. I did not look at her. I told myself I needed more data. This was true. It was not the only thing that was true. By minute 8, the compound absorbed dose had climbed past the lethal threshold built for Vornathi baseline biology. The panel generated its first automated alert. Threshold exceeded, critical. Orath had pushed her meal container slightly to one side. She was reading a personal data slate, one knee drawn up. The amber bottle rested in her lap. Dave Orath moved without speaking, positioning herself directly behind my chair. I heard her thorax plates lock. It was a quiet series of clicks. In 6 years, I had never heard them lock. 6 years, I said nothing aloud, but I thought it. I have worked with her for 6 years. She has never locked before. At minute 9, dermal contact time exceeded the incapacitation window for every species in the Velathes index. Compound 11 was rated to affect 98.1% of assessed species within 6 minutes of skin exposure. Orath's forearms had been bare since she entered. At minute 14, no vesiculation, no color change. She scratched her left elbow. She turned a page. I logged the word unremarkable. The instrument told me something was wrong. The subject told me, by continuing to exist and read, that the instrument had simply reached the edge of what it knew to look for. At minute 16, the panel escalated. Species mortality threshold exceeded ×6. The system generates this category automatically when absorbed dose crosses the lethal threshold for the subject's registered species by a factor of 6. It is designed to prompt immediate extraction and post-mortem documentation. I had never seen it trigger on a living subject. Orath was alive, she was reading, she had finished her lunch. Sova Then said very quietly, "Examiner." I said, "I know." She did not say anything else. The panel told me she was dead 6 times. She was on her 3rd page. I did not pull the trigger. This was the longest decision of my professional life, and I made it by not making it, by continuing to log, continuing to watch, continuing to record the panel's escalating certainty against the subject's uninterrupted afternoon. Quelrathden's itinerary ticked down in the corner of my screen. I checked it repeatedly, the way a Vornathi checks anything that is making his skin shift, repeatedly without comfort. At minute 30, the panel added a new field it had never generated before, cross-species calibration flag, subject biology outside profiled index. This field had no downstream action attached to it. The system did not know what to do with it. Neither did I. My reflection in the darkened glass panel to my right showed a Vornathi examiner the color of a system alert. I noted this. I logged it. I continued watching. At minute 37, she stood up. She did it the way people stand up when they have finished something, not abruptly, not with any awareness that 40 minutes was nearly over, just with the ordinary completion of someone who had been sitting and was now done sitting. She collected her meal container. She capped the amber bottle and clipped it back to the container with the worn rubber band. She walked to the observation glass. Her pupils were reactive. Her gait was unaltered. Her forearms, which had been in contact with compound 11 for 28 minutes, showed no surface change of any measurable kind. The panel behind me was still reading species mortality threshold exceeded ×6. The number had not changed. She had not changed either in any way I was equipped to measure. She looked at me through the observation glass. "Is there a sink somewhere?" she said. "I want to rinse this before it dries." My voice was level. "The session is not complete." She held up the amber bottle. "I know, I'm just saying after." She looked at it. "I also ran out. I only had about a third left and I thought it would last, but I didn't check before I left and that's on me." A pause. "The food here is really bland." 3 minutes and 12 seconds remained on the clock. Respiration 14, pupils reactive. The compound panel to my left was documenting a post-mortem. She was asking about kitchen facilities. I cleared the session at minute 40, 0 seconds. Not early, not late. Then I called the board. The 38-minute emergency session had the quality of a room that had agreed, collectively, not to say the most obvious thing. I presented the data in sequence. The board watched the numbers. Nobody asked whether the data was accurate. The data was clearly accurate. That was the problem. Board Chair Quelrathos, Tharkovi Senior Administrator, hollow-boned, very still, looked at the Times 6 alert timestamped against Orath's unremarkable post-session vitals. She opened a new document. What she typed was not a falsification. It was a flagging of anomalous species variable data for consortium review prior to reissuance of certification standards. The VUCS doctrine was marked under review in the station registry 4 hours and 52 minutes before Quelrath's transport docked. He reviewed the data without speaking to Orath. He filed an amended inspection report, species variable response outside current index parameters. I watched him grip his left wrist as he read the panel log. I had been waiting for it. Sova then told me after the session that the bottle smelled like something her grandmother used to add to protein meals on a colony station when she was young to make them worth eating. She did not know what it was. She just knew the smell. I logged this conversation. I am not certain why. The amber bottle was photographed, bagged, placed on shelf 4 of the assessment division's biochemical evidence locker between a cracked Vrethkai thorax plate and a corroded atmospheric probe. The label reads, Cadet Personal Effects, ORRATH, Condiment Bottle, Capsaicin Compound Type, Biochemical Significance, Class Indeterminate. It is on shelf 4 now, between a cracked thorax plate and a corroded probe, labeled for precision and nothing else. The label is accurate. I have never written a more accurate label in 14 years. I have never been less satisfied by one. The VUCS Doctrine Review is assigned to a 9-species working group. The working group has, as of the date of this report, not yet identified the correct category for what occurred in Chamber 7. Somewhere there is a world where this was a condiment. I have filed everything correctly. I went home. I have not stopped being Violet.